So today I'm gonna do something simple, just work on the CSS. And maybe if I finish the CSS, I'll start working on the other part that is more complicated, which is gonna be connecting the front end with the back end, with the API. It's not really a back end, I think. So first, I'm gonna explain what I'm thinking about. And I think I'm just gonna do like something chill today, because we'll see, but this part's gonna be very complicated, I think. And once it gets to that part, I think I'm gonna have to go back to trying to make the C compiler thing work and study more on the lower level again and trying to finish the other stuff. And then after I finish that, then I can come back, I think. But I'm gonna explain this briefly, and then I'm gonna start working on the CSS again. So what I'm doing is just trying to connect this thing here that I built. Also had a lot of problems because this is a lot more painful than I thought it would be. Actually, I was expecting it to be painful because I hate CSS. And it always feels like stuff takes too much time, way more time than it should take. Because CSS is quite annoying to me. But I was having a lot of problems to be able to resize this, so I found a way. I'm not really sure if this is the best or not, but it's working. So I'm just gonna leave it like this for now. But I have to test to see, I have to change the data that I'm receiving here to see when this goes beyond the width that I have here, what's gonna happen. Because on other sites that have this structure here, what happens is that they cut, maybe I can show on VS Code. They cut the name of the file, yeah, the three dots here. And I want to see if my stuff is working with the thing here. I just copied the CSS for the most part. Not everything, but some stuff from Code Sandbox. Because obviously they figure out like I like the way that their site looks, so like why not use the same stuff. So, and the icons I figured out that all you have to do to put icons is that you have to find the SVG. You find the SVG file, a free one, obviously, and then I create a component for each one. So here for the arrow, for example, just found, and then I create separate components, and then I put the component on the other one. And the folder, I'm using this recursive function here. So there's a lot to think about. So yeah, but one of the biggest issues I had as well is that when I changed the size here, it was messing up the drag event as well because of the coordinates. So I figured out a way to solve that as well. And now what I'm gonna do is just I'm almost done, I think, with this part. I'm just gonna put some like more complicated data here, so just see what happens. And then after that, I'm gonna start thinking about probably gonna find new icons here. Or not new icons, but search for other icons to put here that can represent different stuff. And one of the biggest challenges that I have now is just to figure out, because one of the problems that I have still is that when I expand this stuff goes to the side, and that's very bad because then the other thing disappears. So I already was thinking about this before, which is I have to figure out, I'm gonna try to see if I can figure out a way to, instead of displaying this stuff here, I display on the sidebar as well. And I also think that the search nodes here, if I can, but this is the problem. I don't think I'm going to be able to, because it would be ideal if this stuff was on another tab that I'm going to put the filter on as well. But I don't think I'm going to be able to make that happen because this is attached to a Zustan store that is inside of a graph component. And I'm going to create other customizations that depend on other stores that are more for like the external parts of. One store is more for structuring graphs, and this store is more for customizing the graph that already exists. So, and the filter is like better, is easier to implement, and I think better if I leave it on the other customization store, but maybe not. Maybe I should figure out a way to put the filter here as well, because it obviously makes a lot more sense for the filter to be close to the search. But the reason why it's difficult is that to put this stuff on here is that they are located at different parts of the tree because of the nature of the thing. So the substance store and the customization. So like I'm gonna have to see if I can find a hacky way to just create the illusion that they are part of the same thing, which is gonna be hard. I think I'm probably gonna have to create another stuff here, like another section or something like that, or I just embed in the functionality of the. So instead of creating this button here, I could just move this button to so it looks like it is on here, and then when you click, then it does the functionality, even though they're disconnected. But it's gonna be. I think I can do it like that. I'm probably gonna have to make it as a part of the. I think I'll think about this stuff later. I'm gonna first explain what is going on here. So, like the biggest issue that I have to think about is that because of the structure of the things, because of the structure of the routing with React DOM, it forces you to create. If you want to scale a page, it forces you to create a template where you have to create only one component that is gonna serve as a variety of different pages. So the component is always the same, the code is always the same, but the data is always going to change. And the challenge that I'm having is that I want to create several different. So I was thinking about what is the best way to create functions, because one of the things that I'm going to do is just provide animations here and events. And some events are going to have animations attached to them. So for example, if I click a node, one of the things could be like highlight a different pattern or whatever. Except I'm not 100% sure exactly what I'm going to do, but it's kind of the idea where I'm going to have some functions that are events, and then I'm going to pass those functions to the component that is going to load the graph. And I'm going to have some functions that are animations as well, that has another component that is going to handle, which has another store. So, and on top of that, I'm going to have multiple different graphs for different kinds of project. So you can imagine that this, instead of being these names here, this could be like the pandas project. So each page on here is going to be its own project, and it's going to be loaded from this one. So this one is going to have a variety of different projects, and this is the template page that loads the stuff. So when I click here, the page is always going to be the same, which is going to be this template, but what is going to be different is going to be the data, which is going to be the stuff that I'm going to get from the API, which is the folder structure for the project, and the graph structures. So this is the point, is that because I have to create only one page that accommodates for everything, then the answer is always on the logic. The answer is going to be on the logic of the function itself, because you always need both sides of the spectrum, I think. So you need like the structure to scale, but at the same time you need the flexibility because of the data. And this is something that is becoming more and more clear to me. So the way you build the functions is always going to be a reflection of this gradient, which is how structured something is and how much variance the data has. And the logic of the function is going to be a reflection of this dynamic. So one side I have the API, and the other side I have the front end. And I think there's two main, and then in between them I have the what graphs I want to build, and what animations and events I want to build for the specific project. So there's two main strategies, I think. One is to encapsulate the logic of the function based on the routing for the project. So that means that, for example, every time that they click here, I'm using the same page, so I'm gonna have to send the same request. So what's gonna change is the data that is sent on the request. So I can encode information on the route here based on whatever they click here. And then based on that information on the backend, I structure the function, the logic of the function, so that I get the data the data that I want. This is one strategy, and the other strategy is I create a template for functions and animations that I'm always going to use, and then I encode the information for each project instead. So, like I encode the flexibility based on the front end, not the back end. So the data that I receive from the back end is always going to be the same, but the front end logic is going to contain stuff that handles the flexibility of different projects. But regardless of which way I go, I have to think about how to create the functions. Like the functions have to encapsulate the variance of the data, and that's the challenge. So I spent some time thinking about this, and I think that it makes a lot more sense to do the second way, which is to encode the flexibility on the front end. And the reason why is because the variance of the projects is going to be very high. So every single project is going to have a different file structure. So it's like completely different on every single project. So if I'm going to try to encapsulate the variance on the function, is going to be ridiculous, because or maybe it's even impossible. So what I have to do is just to, instead of doing that, I have to create templates for different types of graphs that I want to display the visualization for, and different types of animations and events. And then based on these templates, I encode the information based on the project. And then I think maybe, and this is the part that I'm not really sure, but I hope I'm going to be able to encapsulate the logic in the project itself. So, for example, the graphs that I receive from the backend are always going to be the same. And then this leads me to two different conclusions. One is that a very important thing to figure out is how to cache the requests, because ideally I would only make the requests on the first time that they load the page. So I retrieve the folder structure the first time, and I retrieve all possible graphs that they can visualize. And then regardless of whether which route they click here, because each time that they click here is going to trigger the request again, based on the way that the thing forces you to set things up. So yeah, I'm gonna make the requests probably on this component inside of the use effect here, I think. And then I'm let me think. No, I'm gonna make the requests on the parent component from this one. Yeah, I think this one. Yeah, so here I have the data. So right now I'm just creating an object, and then I'm passing the object, obviously because I'm just testing the thing. Which I'm also gonna have to change now to see, because the way that I just got this from ChatGPT, so I can structure everything, but I'm gonna have to transform this into an array instead of function, because I want a possibility to have multiple different root folders. And then that's gonna make me change the logic, but I'm gonna be getting this data from an API on this level, and then I'm gonna be passing this data as a props to this component, that is this one, and then this one passes to this one, and then this component has this other component that is a recursive thing. And on this one, I'm gonna have these components that's this other component, which is the file, and the file I'm gonna put a link here. So instead of a lead, it's gonna be a link. And then when they click the link, obviously it's gonna trigger another request, but it's just gonna go to the same page because of the way that the dynamic routing works with React DOM. So it's just gonna do the same request that it did before. It's just gonna change the pattern that shows here. And the thing that is not gonna change between requests is that the parent folder of the project is always gonna be the same. So I can select the information that goes. So I can make it so that one of the patterns is always the same. So is the name of the project, for example. And the way that I encode that is by the name of the folders. Yeah. So like the first, because the way that the component is going to work is loading these names here based on the data structure that I'm setting up here, which is this one. And because I'm going to receive this from the folder, I can select which thing that is going to show up here as the main thing. So, or I can send some other information, so that in this way I can make sure that I'm making a unique request for each project, but then the variance comes after, which are the other folders. So I know that the first pattern is always going to be the same. For example, it's going to be Python, then /pandas for the pandas, and then all the other ones are going to be dependent on where they click here, where the file is located. It's going to be here. And then this is the challenge. Is like the challenge is around this pattern. How do you encode information on this pattern on the routing, so that you structure the functions in such a way that allows you to scale while at the same time maintaining flexibility. So the challenging thing is, like, I think that the best way is to create a standard graphs and standard graphs and animations and event functions that I always receive. And then I receive one time, then I cache the response on this thing. And I'm probably going to use React Query for that, so I have to study that as well. And after that, I have to think about, like, how do I find an archetypal structure that regardless of which project it is, the visualization is going to work well. And this is the challenging part, because I have to think about how I'm going to, not only I have to figure out how to parse the code and extract meaning, but I have to think about how can I get the essence of the visualization in such a way that the variance of the different projects is not going to interfere with the way that I built the logic for the way that all this data is going to work, like being passing back and forth the data. And I'm not 100% sure if it is even possible to do that, because if you can think about, like, I think that this leads me to the conclusion that the graphs can't be based on the folder structure of the thing. They have to be based on something more fundamental. So this makes it hard. But obviously you can see how it's connected, because one thing, like, I can't untangle these two things. So the way that I do visualization, it has to be connected with the way that the file navigation works. Let me just read what I wrote here, and I'll continue to think about this. So yeah, the most challenging part is how do I structure the visualization so that it always works. Because I'm gonna have to put inside of the function the logic, for example. Like inside of this function, I make the API request here, and then I'm gonna pass as graph data here, for example, graph data or something like that. Then out of this graph data, and maybe instead of nodes and edges, I just do graph data instead. Maybe not, I just pass as, no, but actually, let me think about it. Yeah, maybe it's better if I just change this stuff here, and then inside of this component on the other one here, then I access the graph data, the nodes and edges. Because what I'm going to do is not send one nodes and edges, I'm just going to send a variety of different graphs. And this is the downside of this approach, is that if I encode the information on the pattern here that comes after, then the positive side is that I can make the request for only one graph, depending on which part of the navigation they're at. But the other way forces me to just do everything on the first request. And this can be very bad, because you can imagine but the thing that makes me think that this is the best approach is because the variety of graphs, the variance on the graphs is not that high, but the variance on the file structure is high. So this is the relationship that is becoming more clear in my mind, and that I want to highlight, is that the structure of the function itself is directly correlated with the relationship of variance on data and what parts force you to create the structure. And I think it's a fundamental pattern that is always going to happen on any website that you're going to create, and regardless of the framework, because it's more fundamental to that. I think it's related to physics on space-time. So it's like a funnel of information. So I have the variance, the data is always going to have variance, and then you're going to have the pages that you create are archetypal templates of the variance. So they reduce the variance into meaning based on the structure you create, and that's what you're doing. And the functions are, the structure of the functions are the direct relationship between how you you make these trade-offs in decisions based on the way you want to capture meaning out of the data. So here, the way that I think this approach is the best is because the variance of the graphs is not that high. So maybe I'll have like 10 different types of graphs maximum. Or maybe let's say even that I have 50 types of graphs. The amounts of different projects that you can have in different file structures is a lot higher. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to encode everything here. But then this forces me to get everything on the first request. And then I have to think about how I'm going to cache this so I don't keep making the same request every time that they navigate in the same project. But then after I receive all of this stuff, I'm going to probably pass here as a graph data or some variable like that. And I have to refactor this as well, so I don't put as data here. Or maybe I pass everything as data and then I put them together. I put the folder structure. I think that's probably the best because I need both. Or maybe not. Maybe it's better to, yeah, I think it's better to separate because there might be situations where I only want the graph and not the folder structure. So I'm gonna make this based on props as well. So inside of this component, I'm gonna put conditions that's because not only I'm thinking about this page here, I'm also thinking about if I scale this to several different languages or want to do several different things, then I want to have the same template to be used across anywhere. So there might be situations where I don't want to show the folder structure, or just want to show the ID, or vice versa, or I just want to show the graph. So the way to structure that is just to make based on control flow what components, custom components are going to show based on the props that I receive. But I'm probably going to have, instead of nodes and edges, I have graph data, and then I pass to this one. And then inside of here, I'm going to have, this is another complication because I'm going to put another component here. Maybe I put inside of this one, because I'm thinking about creating either a div or something that displays only the text from the file that is currently selected. So one of the options that I think I'm going to start with is just displaying the actual file, the text from the file, which will be the code. And the other option will be to display an ID so people can write. And then maybe I can have variations of both, but I have to think about whether or not it's better to connect them, put them inside of this, or put them separately here. But either way, I think I'm going to connect them through the store that I created here for the other components. But then you can imagine that I'm going to receive the graph data here, and then here I'm going to have to create logic based on which component I have here, which is going to show depending on the icon. So every time I click here, it's going to be one of these icons here, and it's going to change what is showing here. So the defaults, I think, is going to be the folder structure, and then depending on which one they select here, I'm going to have other components. There are other customization stores that are going to create the graphs and also provide the... Yeah, I need some logic here, maybe. I have to think about this. Because I'm going to receive several... Maybe I have a default graph that I always show. Because at some point here, I need to, like, I'm going to be receiving the graph. I need to have a function that receives the graph data, and then out of this graph data, it does some logic. That's like control flow, like so if else or whatever, or loops or whatever I'm going to do, and then based on that, it passes specific nodes and edges for different graphs. So what's going to happen inside of this is directly correlated with the way that I'm going to pass data back and forth. So I'm thinking about whether or not it's worth it to create another component, because I'm not really sure if I can send the values. I put another component here, and then put this component inside of the other one, and then on that one create the logic so I can access the values of the store. I think that's probably better. Because when I initialize the store, I think I'm going to... Or maybe actually not. Maybe just pass on the store initialization. No, but actually, yes. Because instead of receiving from props, I have to receive from the store. So I think I'm going to have to do that. I'm going to create another component here, and then inside of this component, or inside of the other component, I just use the store, and then as I initialize the store, I pass the values for different types of graphs. Then on the store, I have the logic of the function that selects what graph is going to be shown. And then I'm going to have to create some additional logic to select, because maybe I want to encode information for different projects. I select different types of default graphs. And that's going to happen on the other component, I think. But that's kind of the idea. Let me go back and read this stuff here that I wrote. Then I'm going to work on CSS. I'm probably going to spend some time talking about this as well to clarify my mind. what I'm gonna do. But it's becoming more and more clear to me, like these kinds of things. So the function should be based on routing, try the necessary flexibility, challenge how to structure routing in file pages logic so that the same functions work regardless of which project or which file is being selected. There's also the thing, but I think I've been contemplating, and I think it's probably better to just focus on Python first and just like focus 100% on Python and forget about everything else, because I need to. It's gonna make it a lot easier if I just focus on one thing. But obviously, I think it's better to keep in mind that I'm probably at some point want to scale for other things as well. So I structure things in a way that it is possible to scale, or it becomes easier to scale. But then I was thinking that, like, if I'm gonna create some stuff for other languages, then what I can do is just create another template of the page, and then I'm just use the same template for the Python one, but just create another routing, and then on that one I change the logic. So that allows me more flexibility. So for example, you can imagine that for Python projects, it may be the case that one type of graph is the best to show as the default, but for Rust projects is another type of graph. And for projects that have different languages, it's like other types. But then for that level of flexibility, I can just encapsulate based on the main page itself, which is the template that I'm using to load everything. But yeah, so the challenge is inside of the template. How do and the only way to answer this stuff, I think, is just like, this is the reason why I said that I'm probably gonna have to go back to the C compiler stuff, and then go back, like, once I figure that out, then go back to Python, because I have to start trying to create graphs to see which one is gonna be most likely to be useful. So I most likely what I'm gonna do after I finish like this initial template is just spend a bunch of time trying to. I'm gonna pick a project, probably in Python, and then I'm gonna try to study the project using the visualizations, and I'm gonna see. I'm gonna generate obviously a bunch of ideas and try to create stuff that makes it easier to understand what's going on in the project, and then only after I have that, then I'm gonna be able to. It's gonna become more clear what kinds of graphs are gonna be useful, and then from that point I can start thinking about the other stuff. Yeah, so all this stuff made me realize that I need to prioritize figuring out caching, which is going to be very hard, because I know that people talk about that caching is one of the hardest things to do. So I'm going to probably try to figure that out right after I finish this CSS. Maybe I think I'm going to try to finish the icon logic first and the folder, so the navigation here, and maybe create like the filter components. Yeah, I have to create the beginnings of the structure of the store and the other component. That is going to be customization. The first thing that I'm going to do, I think, is the filter thing. So information has to be encoded on file paths that is sent with requests. Or I always send the same data regardless of requests, and then create logic for graph in the front end, which is probably the better way, since it will be too difficult, impossible to structure logic for all possible projects in one function. The problem with this is how to structure graphs and store on the front end. The logic will have to be able to change depending on which project it is. Creating the graph templates in the front end instead of back end makes more sense, since it's easier to create template graphs. They probably work for any project, but it's not easy to create a template for graphs that would work based on the routing path, since the variance is a lot higher. All routing paths will be different for each project. So let me start working on the CSS. So I think the first thing that I have to think about is how to change the. I need to create another component here as well, and then I need to figure out. I kind of want to do the other component first, to be honest. you put here. So what would be a good name for this? I feel like I'm running out of names for components that are related to graphs. Maybe I'll do this. So let me write here and then I'll do this later. Maybe actually it's better to start working on the, after I change the data structure there, that for the folder, it's probably better to just start working on the API. And then, so I can have like the beginning template of how it's gonna look like. Then after that, I think about the other, because I have to set up the graph store. So this is the challenging thing. It's like difficult to think about which one to do next, because for sending the graph data, I need to think about different types of graphs. So the graph creation is always going to be on the back end, I think. The creation of all possible types of graphs, because then I encode the information on the data structure. And the front end part is just the logic that determines how I'm going to structure those graphs. There's other big thing that I probably should research, but I'm not really sure if it's worth researching much, because I think it's better, to be honest, to just do it in practice and see what happens. But I have to obviously think about these limits, because let's say like, because I said about before that I was thinking about doing pagination, and I'm probably gonna try to do that. But if I do it like that, then there's a chance that I'm gonna have like graphs that have thousands of nodes in the back end, and even though I'm only displaying some parts on the front end, I have to think about what is the best way to handle this logic. So maybe, I think most likely, for at least for what I think now, is it probably will be better to put all this logic on the backend. So I can put a condition that says like, if the graph, if it reaches this many nodes on the data structure, then you cache on the backend, or you do some logic that, and maybe the pagination, yeah, but it wouldn't be good to have the pagination, like I have to send everything, I think, in the beginning. That's the problem, I have to send it. Because I can't rely on future requests to send the rest of the graph. So I think I have to send everything in the beginning. Or maybe no, maybe I attach to the pagination. So yeah, I think that's probably better, actually. So I can make a logic that, for example, when the graph has 10,000 nodes, obviously it's going to be a lot less than that for... Maybe just put the limit based on whatever the pagination is, which is going to be probably 330 nodes. So this is probably going to be on all graphs. Actually, it's probably going to be complicated because I'm going to have to split between the two. So I'm going to have both like the logic on the front end to separate the graphs, because it's going to be... I think it's the same thing that happens with the hierarchy of cache. It's exactly the same thing. It's just the flow of space-time, I think. So that's what's happening here, which is interesting to think about. But yeah, the logic I'm gonna have to create is like a funnel where, like, maybe on the back end I put the limit as 10,000 nodes, and then on the front end I put as 1,000. Then the pagination logic is gonna have to take into account where, like, once it hits 1,000, then I have to make another request. But until it doesn't get there, then I just get the ones that I have on the cache on the front end. And then on the back end, I'm gonna have some other logic that is gonna cache the request and what kinds of nodes were sent. So if I have an it's better to write this stuff here. So if I have a graph that has like 100,000 nodes, then on the function on the backend, like the first request, I just cache send 10,000, for example, cache the rest. And then I need to cache the information. Yeah, that's probably how I'm gonna do it. And then on the front end is gonna be the same thing. So they're both gonna have their caches, and it's gonna be very complicated thing to do. And then depending on what number the pagination is gonna do this back and forth between the two. Get send from the front end. So it creates like this flow here. It's based on the pagination. So on both of them, I have to think about the logic to do that. It's probably gonna be, it's definitely gonna be on the Zustan store, true. Because it's gonna be part of the components that I'm gonna put here. And I have to find some icons that make sense to display. So what name can I put for the graph logic or graph router? Maybe graph router. Don't know why it's not working there. Probably because I don't have any elements here. So let me think about it. The idea that I have now, I want to do just the beginning of this one, then I'll focus on the other stuff. On changing the data there so I can see how it's gonna look. But the idea is that I receive when I receive this on the props here, it's gonna initialize the store based on this. So initialize the values here. Yeah, maybe instead of nodes and edges here, it's gonna be graph data instead. And then I initialize them as empty in the beginning. Also, I have to be careful because on JavaScript, I don't remember really well if it's gonna fail, but I can just test to see. I think this is gonna work, so. And then here I have graph data, and then based on the graph data, I have to think about whether or not, maybe it's gonna be both, but where to put the logic that is gonna determine what happens with the graph data. So the graph data is gonna have several different graphs. It's gonna be very complicated, like a very complicated data structure in the backend. So I'm not gonna do the cache for the pagination stuff, like for now. I'm just gonna try to make it simple first, then after I build everything, then it starts getting more complex. But I think on the front end it's worth it to spend time trying to see now, after I do this other stuff, how to use React Query to cache. Yeah, I received the graph data on this, and then on here, maybe I put folder structure. The graph data is going to contain multiple different types of graphs. There's probably going to be an object that has the type of the graph and the structure, just the nodes and edges. Or the key is going to be the type, and the thing is, the nodes and edges are going to be. It has to be a nested thing. Fuck. Oh, there's also the events as well. Events and animation. But I think that's better to get from the store. Let me think about this. Because I have to think about whether or not like I create some other function here, or I create a function on the store to organize the logic. I think it makes more sense to put it on the store because the other components gonna use. Yeah, the other components of the are gonna. So it has to be based on the store. So probably gonna get everything from the store, even the graph data. Or maybe it doesn't matter here. It probably doesn't matter. I don't need to receive anything. I just initialize everything based on the store, and then I get the values from the store. And this works as the ones that are currently selected. So let me think. And maybe I should create a use memo here or something like that, and or use a fact. I think I probably should do that, and then put as dependencies this stuff here. But I should leave them separated, I think. So for the nodes and edges, put them together, but then for the, or maybe even separate nodes and edges as well, because there might be situations where I wanna just change the values, like the nodes, and keep the edges the same for different types of graphs. And the problem is not, I don't want to call this stuff several different times. Maybe it doesn't matter that much. Yeah, I think it doesn't matter that much. Also here, if I, let me think. So I'm gonna just create some. I'm just gonna do everything based on use memo. I'm gonna do this thing here, and then after I do this, I'm going to change the data there that I'm receiving for the folder structure, and finish the CSS. Then once I do that, then I go back to trying to make it work with the actual API. I remember I have to do some stuff here. Maybe I should do like this. I'm thinking whether like how the events and animation is gonna work. 'Cause I'm not really sure if it's gonna make sense to put the events animations connected to the backend. It's yeah, I probably shouldn't spend so much time on this. I think I spent enough, so it's probably better to just build the stuff, like focus on one graph first, like one project first, and then really try to make it better. Then once I do that, then I can think about it again, because it's gonna depend on that, so. There's a lot to think about. Something that is weird as well is that I don't remember that. I think that this wasn't happening, but it started happening at some point, and I don't know why. That's it. The graph has these small glitches or breaks in some part of the iteration. You can see, but I think that it has to be because I tested all the use effects and spent time thinking about it, and it didn't change anything major. And the other graphs that have more nodes, less nodes, it still works. So I think it's just because of the size of the graph, because the problem is how to synchronize the physics engine with the visualization. I think this is the reason why it's happening. Maybe the physics engine is lower, so it breaks the animation. But maybe not. Maybe it's something else. So I'm gonna console log first, then I'll think about it. Let's see if I'm getting something. I have to put there the thing. Yeah, I'm probably gonna have to put conditions here to specify. When I send and when I don't send. So probably the names have to change. It's weird because I'm pretty sure that I did the same. Oh, it's because of this. Yeah, making based on something else. Let me think about this. It doesn't make sense to use memo. It makes more sense to use a fact, I think. I'm thinking about whether or not it's a bad idea to. I think I wanna avoid doing like initializing the thing here, everything here, and then putting a use effect here, and making the node equal to the thing. Maybe just put like for the way that I was doing before. Maybe that's better. I'm just gonna do that. The problem, I think, no. The issue with this approach is that I'm not really sure. I think I need to put a use effect here so that it loads again when they change. Yeah, this is the condition there. Oh, I have to set them here. That's what I was gonna do. So just create a use effect.
The mystery of life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience.
There's so much stuff to think about that gets confused. Let me think about this. So, what do I want to do exactly? I think I can't do this right now, so maybe it doesn't matter that I don't have the graph there just because I want to test other stuff first. I have to create the logic on inside of the store. Yeah. Maybe this is fine. I have to think about this later. So, just gonna leave it like this. Maybe I should have another component here as well. So create something that's, yeah, like a default fallback that shows that it doesn't have the graph. This is the biggest issue with doing the API thing, but I can't get away from that, I think. Because I don't like it because it forces me to deploy this stuff on different places, and then it's a more stuff to think about. I like having more everything on the same place. Also because for testing stuff and for developing gets kind of annoying. I'm gonna leave it like this, and I'm just gonna change the structure there now. You know, think about it. Actually, let me see. Yeah, I think I wanted to see if, so maybe I'll do nodes for now here. So I want to see if I'm getting the actual nodes because of the structuring there. Yeah, okay, so it's working. Actually, let me test the events as well. I forgot how I was passing the events. I think that's with this thing. Should probably do. Oh, this is another thing to test. Is what happens when I don't have the graph, but I have the animation. But I think it's not gonna load anything because it doesn't load the components, so it's fine. Let me think about it. I wonder which thing is better to do first. If I should just try to use it, like do only use effect first. And probably I have to set the state instead of just doing the way that I'm doing here. So I put a state here. Then when I receive, I set the state. So I wonder if it's better to just spend time now focusing on figuring out React query, or if it's better to try to solve the API stuff first. So now let me focus on the other stuff. So the issue with changing there is that I don't know where I'm gonna have to change. Because I'm passing, this is a recursive function, and I'm passing the data like this. So I have to think about. Maybe I don't need to. Yeah, I'm gonna try to just remove the thing. So obviously I have to think about this because it's gonna matter when if I don't pass the name here. See what happens. I'm gonna have to structure the backend, the response that I'm gonna send based on whatever the data I have here. So let me go back to the other tab. I think the problem here is that it shows this stuff regardless, so when you don't have a parent folder, it breaks. So I think if I just put the condition there, if the name doesn't exist. Hmm. Let me just see what's gonna happen if I sound like this. So it still shows this one. What I want to achieve is obviously to have instead of having this level, just having like multiple different folders in the beginning. Instead of always relying to, because it doesn't make sense. Because the page is already going to indicate what project it is, so it doesn't make sense for this to be pandas, for example, and then the files just occupies unnecessary space. But I'm trying to think about how to structure the function. Because if I change one thing, it's recursive, so it's gonna. And recursion is confusing as fuck. So obviously one thing that I can do here is just data.name. I think it doesn't matter. The easiest way, if I could do it, is on the first call. First time that I call this. But then if I do it outside, it's gonna change everything. I think if I just put the condition in the beginning, but it's still gonna show the thing. So maybe I do a fragment here. And put everything inside of the fragments, and then I do the condition. I'm not really sure if this is good or not. I'm already kind of tired because I've been working before streaming, so. Not sure how long I'm gonna go. Yeah, this is the problem, is that it's not gonna show anything there. So how can I show? So another thing is she puts here. So I just do the thing here instead. Not sure if I like the way that this looks though. I have to think about it. You know, this is, yeah. And now I don't understand what's going on. Maybe it's because of this thing. Let me just go back and think about it again. So what if I put this stuff there? The thing is that even if it works, it's gonna be very ugly. I'm not really sure if it's gonna work or not. I suppose. Oh, it still doesn't work. It's because of this thing here. If I remove, it's gonna be... Maybe I can leave as true in the beginning. But I think it's gonna just like put everything open. Oh, maybe it works. Yeah, but everything's open, that's the problem. There isn't any files here as well. Hmm. The easiest thing is if I just can figure out a way. The problem if I do it from the outside, it's gonna be very annoying as well, because I'm gonna have to change all the CSS. So I think I need to figure out this from the function. Either the function or I change the data structure as well. Hmm. Maybe just the data structure. Yeah, I think it's just the data structure. I'm overcomplicating things. Because if I remove and then I just do this, I think this way is gonna work probably. But the issue is that the keys. Hmm. You'll be right back. I have to spend time thinking about this. I'm trying to find the easiest, thinking about the easiest way, easiest thing that I can do, so that it shows like multiple different files here. But maybe it's just the data structure. Thing is, like, I don't want to spend time thinking about this. The only thing I can do is just ask ChatGPT, extend the thing there. So it's weird to me that the feeling that I have is that there's probably a way to change the data structure so that it works, because otherwise the other ones wouldn't work. So let me think in the beginning here. It's just gonna be the thing there. And the problem is if I... The only way to change the data structure is to have multiple different dictionaries in the beginning. So maybe the easiest thing that I can do is just pass a list of the same dictionary, and then I just map over the list here. But I know there must be like there is a better way probably. So like all I have to do is figure out how to change the levels. The issue is that in the beginning is gonna be the only reason why it's working on the other one is because it's looping over already. So like it is receiving. Maybe if instead of putting a list here, a dictionary, put an array. You know, array of objects. Then because then I wouldn't be able to check there. Maybe with this approach, I think I can have multiple different folders here. The best way is probably a condition here that I have to put. Then it's gonna loop over. And the problem is that it has to work with the recursion. So I'm not really sure why the name doesn't work. Because all of them have names, I think. I just realized that this is wrong. Oh, it's here. The easiest way I can think is just creating a list instead of a dictionary and then mapping over the list, and then yeah, but then it's still not very good because then I would have multiple different components. It has to be something inside of this one. Maybe I just pass the easiest way is probably just to put like another variable here. And then based on this, maybe this works. I still don't like the way that it is written here because I think it may. I mean, maybe this one is not good also. Yeah, I think if I did it in the same way that I did the other ones, it gonna work. Okay, remove this. How did I do it on the other one? Oh, maybe it's just because I have an extra one? Yeah, because I removed the other one. But this one I think is not gonna work because it's always gonna be false. So like in the beginning it would have to be something here that makes it or I changed the data so that the other ones have the thing, but not sure if that's the best as well. I think object has own property. Yeah, but then yeah, maybe this one works actually. I'm just gonna loop over. So it's looping over, mapping over the children, and then so the folder is an object, and folder is an object, and the children are the folder and files are objects, but the folder has children, which is the other thing. The other way that separates is the type. Mm. Maybe this one works. Oh, still. So the problem is that on the second time it's gonna fail here, I think. So it goes here first, then it loads this one because it's a folder. But the thing is that this one doesn't have a type. Maybe that's... But I think it's not gonna change anything. So let me think about it. The beginning. It's because of the use open here, I think. But and the problem is that it's gonna show. It's showing the icon, so it means that it's going here, probably. Damn, it's confusing as fuck. I think I'm gonna go grab some water. I'll be right back. Oh, when it doesn't have anything, it's gonna show this one. The beginning. So I guess that's the difference. So on the way that it was doing before, it was showing this one on the top, and then this one clicks and this one toggles. No, when it toggles, it shows the children. But why does it work when you have multiple different folders? I guess you are just creating another one. I'm just passing the data. The issue in the beginning is if I only have children, it's not gonna show. Hmm. Maybe instead of putting the condition on both of them, I just put on this one. And then I leave. Yeah, but the problem is that this, in the beginning, has to show something. So the way that the thing was structured is always going to show the folder first. So like, I have to think about, because the problem is if I change the logic of this one, it's gonna. But maybe if this is true, then and I pass as children on the top, then it's just gonna loop and create. So let me think. Type folder. I think if I try to go back. Yeah, this is the problem, is that maybe if I set to false here. Not sure if this is gonna work. No, it's creating an infinite loop. So maybe the other way, and then I just return here. Let's... Sure if I think I can set the state here. Just let me think about this. I think I'm pretty close to figuring it out. This way almost works. So all I have to do is figure out how to make it false when on the next one. So in the beginning it's gonna hit this one, and then it's gonna map over the children. So maybe instead of here, but then the problem is is always gonna make it false. And I think I can set the states instead of here as well. That's the problem. Maybe if I do data dot roots. Yeah, there we go. Nice. I'm not really sure if it's the best one or not. I think I'm gonna leave it like this, and then I'll think about it later again. So now let me think about it. I'm gonna think about... I'm gonna create something here that just puts a bunch of folders and things here. Or maybe I can do it manually. So one thing that I want to see is when I have a bunch of different nested things here, what's going to happen when it reaches the limit here. The other thing that I want to see is when it goes down here. Because on Code Sandbox, and I think... Not sure if CodePen is the same way. The only site that I remember is Code Sandbox, but I know there's other ones. And the way that they do it is that it overflows one of the divs but not the other one. And that would be... That is what I have to do, I think, because of the canvas. The most annoying thing is the canvas. And that's the difference between the way that I have to do it and the way that they do it. Because... and this is an issue because... Like, the reactive fiber canvas is... They say is responsive, but it's kind of weird. Like, I don't know. So the way that I found to structure things now, but I'm not really sure if it's the best or not, or if I'm gonna change, is just to create a wrapper for the canvas. And then the wrapper is... And then there's another wrapper for everything here. And they both work with Flexbox. And this was one of the reasons, probably the main reason why it was so annoying to figure this out here. And the issue is that in the HTML inside of the canvas element from reactive fiber, I can't do anything about it unless I wanna use the own reactive fiber that I was building, like or the way that I was trying to do the components, so I can have control over this stuff. And it's gonna be challenging when it comes to the responsiveness, but honestly, I think I'm not gonna worry about this stuff until very later on, because all the other stuff is more important. So the way that it works now, the way that is working is that it's not responsive like this. The size of the canvas keeps the same, but it is responsive when I reload the page. So I think like on the beginning, when the person gets into the page, then the size is correct. but if you change things, then it fucks up the size, and that's the issue with like moving the stuff here, because then the canvas size is still the same. And this is the problem, is that if I want to manually, like if I want to create a function that changes the width of the canvas, then it becomes a whole problem, because this component is another part of the tree. And then the way to connect them would be to use the store, but then it gets like very complicated. I don't want to build the store just for synchronizing the two different elements. 'Cause I think that's how you have to do it, probably. Like, as I increase the size of this one, it decreases this. I have to manually create a JavaScript function that decreases the size of the canvas as well, and it can't be on the same function because they're separated on the tree of the thing. And so let me write down here what I have to do now. And so first thing is I change the data structure. And I think I'm gonna manually create some stuff here. So I don't wanna create maybe I'll change my mind. It's just gonna do like this for now. And it's gonna take a bunch, so maybe it's better to just create an algorithm. Actually. Oh, the other thing I have to do, but I think I'm gonna leave this for... Maybe it's a good idea to just do this now. Just to create different... I have to find the different icons. So I found a GitHub page here that has a bunch of free icons from a VS Code extension. And then I downloaded that locally, put there. And those are the SVGs that I'm using. So what I have to do is just to put some logic to determine based. I have to create a simple algorithm to determine what's the extension of the thing, and then select the icon based on that. But I think I'm not gonna. I'm just gonna focus on. After reflecting some for some time, I decided that it's probably better to just focus on Python for a very long time, and then just structure everything based on Python. And try to optimize for that. Then after I have a bunch of after it's really clear how everything is connected together, then I can think about moving to other languages. I have several different ideas of integrating different languages as well, but it's gonna be a lot harder. So this is the thing. So it isn't overflowing, but I have to figure out how I'm gonna. I think on Code Sandbox they use the. Maybe I should try to see their thing. They use as the resizer as the overflow thing, but I think my case is gonna be different. This is the problem. If I take it away from here, it's just gonna fuck up the thing. That's not what I want. Oh, it's easier than I thought. For the DAF thing, I think I'm gonna do it with manually. It's gonna be annoying to create an algorithm for this. Yeah, but I'm gonna have to think about now. It's kind of confusing if I do this stuff here. Oh, so it does work. So it's just a CSS thing. Yeah, the issue is the size here. I think it's because of the... Yeah, I have to change some CSS. It's because of the position of the thing. Hmm. It's because each folder I'm creating a different div, so when it overflows, the divs gets... I have to change the CSS for this thing. And this div here, I think. So I'm gonna see on Code Sandbox, I think, how they do it. See if I can do it the same way. Ah, that's good enough. I'm gonna leave it like this. So now I have to figure out the size of this thing. I don't know what exactly is changing between them. I think it's because of the display. Maybe if I remove... But the problem is if I remove the display flags, it doesn't align. I have to figure out a different way to align on the center. I'll test this. Maybe just putting width and height. Ah, that's the issue. It's still fucking up. It's probably because I don't have an overflow there. So let me see if they do. I think after I figure this out, I'm gonna stop here. And we're gonna take a break. What I'm gonna do, probably, I think I'm gonna stream again Friday, and then tomorrow I'm gonna just study the React theory and then go back to the compiler thing. Because it's much better, obviously, to do, like, instead of studying this stuff on stream, it's better to just work on the API thing next, I think. Which is it's gonna be kind of annoying. Maybe I do that off stream because it's kind of annoying. I'm just gonna have to create a script that works on the directory on Python and then structures the directory based on the data that we receive here. That's gonna be very annoying to do it. Probably gonna use ChatGPT. I guess I can just do it here. I guess I can just... Yeah, so... It's always the same size. I'm curious to see when I reach the limit there if it's gonna change anything, but probably not. Yeah, I can't even select here. I think they put a max width here probably. Oh, and they do it based on this calculation. So they're probably using a variable. And based on the variable, based on the... So for each one they calculate how much... Or... I wanna avoid... I think I have to probably use JavaScript. But I wanna avoid doing that. What I think they are doing is probably using a variable. And then for each level that it opens, it adds a different padding on the left. I'm already tired. I think I'm gonna stop here. I'm just gonna do this off stream. Probably what I'm gonna do is just one thing that I can do is just search for the class name here. But I think I already get the logic that they are using. They actually, the last thing that I'm gonna see if it's on the main div here, if there's anything. It doesn't look like they have any main or max width. I'll say they do a display block and stuff. And the organization might be different as well. They might be using a different type of components or structure to create this. But it's probably the same. Because there's a Lee and then div. So it's probably the same. And that's probably what I have to do here. I have to create another div instead of here. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm just changing the wrong one. I think I'm just gonna stop here. I'm already tired. So next time, I'm probably gonna. Yeah, what I'm gonna do now off stream is just to try to see what's going on here. Probably use ChatGPT as well to figure out. But I think that what they're probably doing is just calculating the padding based on the levels. So each time you open a folder, it adds another padding because it's being calculated with a CSS variable, and I think it's being set with JavaScript. Probably. And there's probably some CSS property or something like that that stops the div from stops the elements from shrinking when it gets into very deeper levels. So I'm gonna figure that out. Once I figure this out, then the next step is to just set functionality here so that it changes from the folder structure to the other components that I'm gonna put. Then once I figure that out, I think I'm just gonna follow this here. I'm going to start working on the API, so I can receive the folder structure from the API instead of manually putting there. Which is gonna be based on the request, like I explained in the beginning. And then the next step is to try to use React query instead. And I'm not gonna focus so much on the cache now. I think you're just gonna make it simple as I possibly can. Then right after that, I have to go back to the the C compiler thing, because after I finish this part, I think there isn't. Oh, the other thing that I have to put here actually is the create div or create HTML elements that displays contents of the Python file. Create simple customization components and so I'm gonna create another customization component based on the store, then create. Yeah, I'm gonna do this stuff on the front end until I have the store, the initial store setup, and the initial customization component setup. But then once I'm done with all this stuff, then there isn't anything that I can do, I think, because then it's gonna be more about focusing on how to actually create the graphs that are gonna allow me to understand the projects better. Which is gonna be probably the most interesting part of this and most challenging as well. So when it comes to that part, then I'm gonna have to go back probably on the C compiler, and I might not string for some time until I figure out how to fix this stuff there and study more time. But then that part I'm gonna start thinking about how to. But I think first I'm going to do I'm gonna retrieve a simple graph from the thing. I'm just gonna create a simple template for the graph. So maybe here, or where it's simple graph based on the one I already created on the other projects. So the graph that I have right now is on the other project, so I'm probably gonna just pass this one inside of the Django API. And then I'm gonna call the functionality from that project into the other one to create the graph, just so I can have a simple graph to test everything. Then I'm gonna spend a bunch of time on the back end trying to think about how can I parse the code to extract meaningful visualizations and then send to the. And the goal is going to be to create, I think, like a couple of archetypal graphs that are useful for any project, regardless of what project it is. And then once I have the graphs, I'm probably going to focus on thinking about. Or maybe as I create the graphs, I'm going to think about the animations and events as well that I can put. I think this stuff I'm going to figure out by forcing myself to think, to study, get a complex project, and I have to think about which project to select. And then based on that project, as I try to study that project, then I have to ask questions on what I can do to make it easier to understand. So yeah, I'm not probably gonna come back on Friday to continue to work on this part here.